Tell them who we are, Bob.
And as I was saying, folks, before I was so rudely interrupted, this is the Wild Bob and Ronnie Show coming to you from Lafayette, Tennessee, US of A. And we're here to please you. We're here to make you mad. Just whatever. We'll insult your mama for you if you want us to. So if you want to call us, we're at 423-494-5020. Or you can reach us at 423-201-5917.
That's the one you need to call.
Right.
We'll
okay.
tell him it's a
So,
ring.
but we're here and we're tickled to death. We've got Jerry Kidd, R.L. Henson, and of course we got the troublemaker over here, Ronnie Sharp on
base.
with all that hair on his head.
What we've got here is we got Blossom and what's that other's name?
Delilah.
Blossom and Delilah wandering around here too.
Right, now they were on last week.
Yeah.
And they
got all them our cards and letters, and we brought them back again.
Right, by popular demand.
Yeah, they said they couldn't answer them.
Right.
But
yeah.
they certainly did appreciate you tuning in, I think.
But, you know, I was having a little discussion yesterday, which Ronnie and I have had before, about the use of energy. And I was talking to this young environmentalist, and he says, well, yeah, I understand that we probably are producing additional stocks of oil and stuff like that, but we're doing it faster. We're using it faster than we are replacing it. I said, well, let's look at this thing a little bit different now. This all goes back to Barack Obama's war on coal and oil and what they call that. What kind of energy is that?
Fossil fuel.
Fossil fuels. Now, you know, I maintain, and we got some people here that's pretty smart in this sort of thing. I maintain that that fossil fuels do not produce any energy at all.
Well, I got news for you. There's no such thing as fossil fuels. Fossil fuels was a mistaken identity because oil manufactured by the interior of the earth was being pushed up through areas where fossils existed, and some of the fossils broke off and got into the oil mixture, and when they began studying the first oil scientifically, they found these fossil remains. They said, this oil comes from dead dinosaurs and trees and twigs. But the University of Princeton Science Department has been able to emulate oil, natural gas, and coal from experiments by applying certain chemicals with pressure and heat. But they've never, now this goes back to the German studies, but Tropes, a man named Tropes, another man named Fisher, they figured all this out back in the early 30s. And University of Princeton, after World War II, got their hands on some of their material from the paperclip program that brought all these German scientists and their research over here. And the University of Princeton has never been able to create natural gas, oil, or coal from the remains of dead rats or organic matter of any kind,
well, you know what's
plants
wrong.
or animals.
They ain't got no dinosaurs to work with.
Good point there, but with all
Everybody
this...
knows it takes dinosaurs.
Well, now look, I have gotten pretty adept at this sort of thing in my older years. In fact, I can tell right now when I watch a movie whether they're using the real dinosaurs or not.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, them there old false dinosaurs just don't impress me at all.
But what getting back to you now, this study you're talking about, I'm a little bit familiar with it, but that was not where I was coming from. We were talking about, as I say...
Well, use the correct term, Bob.
Huh?
Use the correct term. Call them natural fuels.
Okay, yeah, but what I was talking about, and the thing that I said, and I'm going to ask this, where does all of our energy in this planet and on this planet come from?
God has provided for mankind to be able to have
But he
energy
did it in a logical manner. Where does all of our energy come from?
From our environment.
Huh? Yeah, but it's got to come. Okay, yeah.
We
Sun.
do get
the
energy
sun.
from the
From
sun,
the sun.
but that's not the major source.
It is.
Yeah, it is. It's the only source.
Well, over time, if you say over time, but did you know they sent a satellite to Jupiter, and it went very near the moon called Titan that circumnavigates Jupiter, and they were able to take very good photographs of the surface of Titan.
Right, okay.
They found coal and oil on the surface of Titan. I mean, when man figures out how to perform space
I know where
travel,
the dinosaurs went.
yeah,
Where they went to.
the ones that had wings,
We've been looking at them suckers.
the ones that had wings went to Titan.
Yeah.
But they have found
That's them there pterodactyls.
Yeah.
they found a coal seam running along the equator of Titan that was something like 5,000 miles wide, laying right there on the surface.
Right.
So God has provided.
Well, I understand that.
And
but
when man
he
gets advanced enough to go to Titan
he
and back,
provided for
we'll never run out of
He
energy.
provided for it in a logical manner. That was created in a logical manner. And I maintain that all of the energy that we have here on Earth came from the sun. You take the Earth is what, 75% water, covered with 75% of the surface is covered with water. You think how many billion and trillions of tons of plankton that grow, absorb the energy from the sun and sink to the bottom of the ocean. Now that's just one source of energy.
That does not become oil or gas or coal.
No, I'm saying, I said, but it absorbs the energy and it sinks to the bottom of the ocean. Now, whether that becomes oil or gas, I don't know. That it just seems, quite odd. They find a lot of it under the ocean if it does not become oil or gas.
Maybe someday we can scoop it up and burn it in our
now
coal
you take, as far
stoves.
as energy is concerned, one flash of lightning has more kilowatts of energy in it than all the energy that's being produced at that time on Earth by man. Just one flash of lightning. Of course, I know that's Ben Franklin tried to capture it with a kite, but I don't know whether we'll ever be able to.
He don't know how lucky he was.
Right, he didn't. Yeah. So, but I still maintain that all of these elements.
He nearly invented the electric chair, didn't he?
If you burn a stick of wood in a controlled environment, you have all of the moisture out of it, and you burn it. The ashes will weigh just as much as a stick of wood did before it was burned. So therefore, energy has no weight. When you turn the light on in a room or you open it up to skylight, it does not become heavier by that light coming in there and lighting that room.
I don't agree with that.
Pardon?
I don't agree with that.
Why?
Because light does have weight.
Huh?
Light does have weight.
It does. How do you measure it?
I don't know.
Well, guys, I got news for you. There's a new theory now called the dark theory. And it does away with light beams. There's no such thing as light beams or beams of light anymore. It's all called dark theory. And what happens is when you create a bulb, it sucks up dark, and therefore we can see. So all your bulbs are dark suckers. Now dark does have weight and particle matter, because go out and rub your finger across the headlight of your car or the dark sucker of your automobile, and that grit you get off there, that's because those headlamps on your car are sucking up dark.
I thought it was bugs.
Leaves particulate matter on your bulb, and if you take a 60-watt bulb that's been burning in your home, it's a dark sucker, and as it sucks up that dark material ends up on that bulb. You can rub your finger on it and feel that dark matter. And
this is not April.
Dark has weight
my wife
and
called
substance.
it something else. She called it dirt.
Yeah, that's what I always heard it was called. What I can't figure out is how come you want to go back in time, you always have to dig down. Where's all that dirt come from?
So we have dark suckers,
Light.
not light.
That might
rays.
be it. All that light been shining on Troy. That's the reason they had to dig down there to
Well, I
find
was
it.
just reading in Smithsonian this month about some of Samuel Clemens' travels up and down the Mississippi River, and they found something that was related to one of the steamships that were bad to blow up during that period of time. In fact, Mark Twain's brother got seriously maimed and died as a result of a ship explosion.
They didn't know how to control pressure.
What?
They didn't know how to control pressure.
It was the boilers, yeah. But they dug up something pertaining to a steam boiler engine along the Mississippi River there, and it was under 43 feet of dirt. Now, and that was on a bluff. It was not where the river flooded it and piled it up. This was on a bluff. Now, I'm like Ronnie, how that thing get
Who carried all that dirt up there?
43 feet down in the dirt?
Gentlemen, you get to talking energy. There was an article ran on the news last night. I believe it was on ABC. They've always got a feel-good thing at the end of the program.
Kind of like this show.
Yeah, kind of like
We're
this show,
just
yeah.
glad to see us go off. We feel good.
Yeah. Hey, you know, I got
The end.
another subject I could talk about too. But anyhow, a young girl, they profiled her and kind of interviewed her parents and whatever. And she had, she was on the show earlier, and that's the alarm system going off, security system.
But anyway, about this girl.
Okay. She developed a flashlight, and it was powered by body heat.
Yeah.
Well, okay, I got some real strong questions there, but they never went any further than that to go into any explanation as to how it worked. And when I first saw it, instead of considering it technology, I considered it to be magic. But now I could be wrong. But I would have loved to have heard an explanation as to how you turn heat. Now, to me, the light had to have been electric, unless there's some form of light that I don't know other than lightning bugs. But she held the light, and the light supposedly was on. Okay, now how is it? What's the difference in body heat and any other heat? And if you can generate electricity directly from heat, that would change the whole world.
Well, I have a question about this flashlight.
Okay, I got a lot of questions about this flashlight.
If she moved this flashlight around to various body parts, did it get brighter in some places
Well, I
and
didn't.
dimmer in others?
It didn't go to that point. I understand what you're saying, but I would have loved to heard some. There it is.
I've been
you just
with-
brought it up.
I've been with some women who could
They could light
Who
up a
could
room.
really, they could light a parade.
Yeah, okay. I agree.
I've been with some that would put the fire out too.
But
You just have a lot of bad luck with
I
women
know
there,
it.
Ron.
To my simple-minded, thinking, a flashlight is not going to run off solar energy because you're not going to have solar energy in the night. And this operates off body heat. So what's the difference? Heat's heat.
I've got a little solar-powered flashlight, and it operates at night.
Well, now you said solar powered. That's not what I'm saying.
Oh, okay.
I'm saying heat powered.
Oh,
to
okay,
where
I
you
got
turn
you. Okay,
heat directly into electricity.
right. Okay.
Okay, that means that this flashlight, if on a good hot night, if we're up there so many degrees, this thing's going to burn to the night. Or you're going to generate electricity, especially on a day like today. We've been generating a lot of it out there from the heat, not the light.
Well, what I know, but I read about this before, but I'm reading it here again, and I got a question for you. But it says she, when you apply heat to one side of the towel, that's holding it, gripping it with your hand, while the other side remains cool because it's hollow and the air circulates through it. The result is a homemade flashlight can shine a light for over 20 minutes. What happens then? Do you get cold?
Oh, well, I'd like to find out. There's got to be a formula. The difference between hot and cold, does that produce direct electricity? Just that there's got to be some sort of a link between the two. And what I'm getting back to is something that turns the difference between hot and cold into electricity. Now, it states that it burns for 20 minutes. There's a lot of unanswered questions in this.
I don't understand that 20 minutes part.
I don't either. But anyhow, if this theory Can our audience hear this?
I don't know. We can.
Well, we don't. We got dead air.
Don't think so. Yeah.
You look good on there.
And now we know.
Now, if the concept works there, why not on a large scale then?
Well, you're not getting much power.
Right.
It's kind of like a lightning bug.
Right. I agree. I see what you're saying. There was only 3, and I believe that was LEDs rather than bulbs.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Interesting concept. Then what it boils down to then, instead of producing a large amounts of energy, what we need to do is use less energy.
But we need solar panels.
Yeah, solar panels, right. I'll tell you, I talked to a guy who had worked with the Department of Energy, and he said they developed solar panels and worked on them for the some of the satellites. And these solar panels, what we have here that we're using, if you have one solar panel go down, one segment of it, it takes 6 other segments to overcome the circuit of that. And he said that the ones they develop, if they lose one, it does not affect the others. And the cost, he said, is way out there. Extremely expensive doing it. The technology in solar panels has got to be very hard to discover or to research or something, because if it were simple, as many national laboratories as we have in this country, we would have, if it was simple, we'd have a solar panel about the size of a thumbnail that would power your house.
I don't know whether it's a matter of being simple or a matter of being practical.
You lost me there. Practical.
Practical, whether it is worth the effort,
Oh.
okay, and the time and the money,
Right.
okay.
This is where I come back to. If it were, the national laboratories have found, whenever we were looking for means by which to power the satellites, we have done a ton of research. And in that untold millions of hours of research, if it was simple or whatever, or if there was a solution to it, we would have had it. It seems like by now.
Well, they've got one advantage. There ain't no clouds up there.
True. And they, of course, I don't know whether they'd have constant sunlight or not, but they do turn.
They will if they stay in the right place.
Well, good point. But the photocells are movable to take advantage of the most light that they have.
Yeah.
But anyhow, I think it's interesting about the flashlight. Just holding it in your hand, and I didn't understand how long, or didn't catch that, but it'll produce light for 3 minutes or 20 minutes. Was that what was said?
From what? The warmth of your hand or what?
That was my understanding. I'm sure there's some more details in it, but it'd be interesting. And I would say also that there'll be several companies in Japan that are, or not Japan, but China, that's looking to make a deal with her.
Well,
Or at least capture that technology.
They don't need to. They done told them.
A thermocoupling on the gas furnace. If you're familiar with that.
Yes, I am.
All right, the heat from the pilot creates enough electricity to open and keep that valve open on the thermocoupling. Now they have taken that another step further. They've made something similar to a thermocoupling that you can place on the side of your wood stove that will produce enough electricity to charge your cell phone and a small battery just from the heat of the wood stove or whatever stove you use. You don't have to be a wood stove as long as it produces heat.
Any kind of heat.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
So,
Well, I wasn't aware of that.
and those are readily available at camping stores. If you want to go camping and keep your cell phone charged, you buy one of those and you have a little, usually they will sell a little small cast iron stove that thing attaches to, and that's enough to make coffee and cook an egg on, that sort of thing. At the same time, they'll charge your cell phone and probably batteries to run LED lights, you know.
That's pretty bad when you organize your camping around keeping your cell phone going.
Yeah, well, that's the modern day way of camping.
You got to play Angry Birds.
People camp today in these big RVs.
Right. But
You don't need any special attachment. You just plug your cell phone charger in there.
We have been sold a load of crap when it comes to all these notions and ideas and fears that we have that we're going to destroy planet Earth. Planet Earth is going to long survive Barack Obama.
It's like George Carlin once said, if this planet gets fed up with the human race, all it has to do is shake like a shaggy, wet dog,
Right.
and we'll all go flying into space, and the Earth will be rid of us.
Right. There you go.
Or recall.
Oh, George still living there, did he?
No, he passed away.
They shipped him out to outer space, didn't he?
I don't know. Did they?
I think so. Let's see here.
Buried him in space?
If they recalled the law of gravity, we wouldn't have to worry about it. We'd all just float away and be done with it.
You know,
Repeal. Let me put it that way. Repeal the law.
There's some interesting theories out now regarding the laws of gravity. That the Big Bang exploded, the Big Bang, which supposedly set our universe into motion, is supposed to be a product of anti-gravity. That's the reason they're all flying apart from one another at tremendous speed. You familiar with that theory?
No, I'm not. Anti-gravity.
The anti-gravity situation. That's the reason the universe is constantly expanding, is because this anti-gravitational push, or whatever it is causing them to continually get away from one another.
Well, I favor the string theory myself. I think all this is tied together by invisible strings.
Right.
That's the reason we don't go flying into space.
There's a lot of theories out there, you know.
You know, what gets me is these scientists with all these theories, and boy, they got some good ones. But 4 scientists on their way to a seminar where they read papers on new inventions and stuff was on a train, Amtrak. And they went to the bar and they drank all day. And the drunker they got, they come up with the theory of parallel universes. So they decided to write a paper on it in their state of drunkenness, and they wrote this little paper and actually got permission to present it at this seminar of physicists.
Okay.
And everybody jumped all over it. So there was one of our great scientific theories, parallel universes, invented by 4 drunks on a train, and it's been adopted as something mathematically plausible.
Right.
But I always say they use their math to prove their theories.
Well, yeah, that's what happens a great deal with your climate change and global warming situation.
They use a different set of math for
yeah,
that.
Well, they use whatever numbers they need to support what they want to support. And if you take their models, which is set up like say 1998 is the norm, you know, you completely ignore all empirical evidence in the past that works against global warming, and you only include the evidence that you have at present and in the recent past to support it.
Well, Bob, I have a theory about all this, and I didn't come up with this in a drunken state, but I believe all these global warmers and these liberal socialist progressives suffer from a disease not yet recognized, but I attribute to MERS of the brain.
Right.
You know, this new virus out here called MERS. I believe there's a MERS out there that infects the brain, and I believe all these liberal left-wing socialists suffer from it.
Well, I'm sure that...
I don't think they got a brain, Jerry.
Oh, well, that is a good point. We need to do more research on my theory.
They atrophy.
Probably Bill Gates will come up with an app that'll take care of all that.
Really, I can't see what's wrong with global warming. We need a little more warm weather. My electric bill's cheaper when it's warm.
Well, I'm definitely for it. You know, I don't believe that it's really warming to the extent that they say it is. In fact, I think this has been one of the fairly coolest Mays we've had for us in the afternoon in a long time. You know,
there was a report hit the internet today that the Antarctic ice is the largest it has ever been for April and middle May.
Okay.
But they say that there's a whole chunk of it just disappeared, and it's going to raise sea levels 200 feet.
Oh, that's aliens.
Do they have that?
Aliens are the one that they needed some ice for their cocktail bar on their spacecraft, so they came down and grabbed a chunk of it.
Let me ask something. Did they ever get the Greenpeace ship freed down there in the Antarctic?
I don't know. What about that,
I don't know. I know that they got Glacier Girl out and under that 240, 50-something feet of snow and ice to Greenland. That airplane.
Yeah, the Glacier Girl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you ever go see that?
Uh-uh.
It was up at Middlesboro. They flew it out of there and took it somewhere else, so. Old guy couldn't maintain it no longer, I reckon.
It was a P-38, wasn't it?
The P-38.
Yeah.
twin fuselage.
P-38 special.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, I had little P-38 replicas when I was 8, 9, 10 years old, and I played with them. You know.
Did you ever sniff any of that glue?
Never sniffed any good.
Me either.
Never sniffed any gasoline. You know?
Me either.
Are you sure you ain't
Yeah.
brain damaged from all that glue, Bob?
That wasn't what did it.
It said right here that there's a whole bunch of hydrocarbons on Titan, by the way. I looked at that back when you were talking about it.
And the earth is manufacturing oil and coal as we speak. You've heard of vertical coal veins, right?
Right.
Now, tell me something. How did them dinosaurs stack up out like that when they died? They climb up on each other and die and then become coal?
Well, no. Well, their theory is that, you know, so much of this, it's like this area here at one time was underwater, okay? And that the coal was pushed up by volcanic activity, a bulging of the surface which rose above the water and created the surface drainage that we have. So most of your chemicals, as far as coal and manganese and magnesium and limestone and everything, was laid down in water. And
Did you guys see on the internet where the state of Utah passed a law, the state legislature passed a law throwing the Bureau of Land Management and the federal government off of 30 million acres of Utah natural resource-based land, and they're going to allow their citizens to mine for potash and uranium, and they've got
that's not in that rare earth section that
they got all kinds of minerals out there
that
and
was,
things that they're going to let people start mining.
China became the only source for what they call rare earth, some of these minerals. And we had an area out there in Utah, and they opened it back up, I think, you know, whether the state claims they did it or who did it, but it was done as a result of national security to open that back up.
Well, it brought back, the Clive Bundy case is the one that got people to looking at the Constitution and looking at the federal intrusion into these private lands. And basically those people in Utah said, look, anytime you permit local people to mine and harvest natural resources and use the natural resources as God intended, and that the wealth of the area rises rapidly, there's job growth, there's economic wealth created, and people do so much better. And the federal government is out to stifle all these endeavors rather than to endorse. They're like our county government here in Campbell County. You know,
Well,
they don't want business. They don't want jobs.
You made a good point the other day when I think you were the one that alluded to some pictures that we had of La Follette back in the 30s.
1932, in the middle of the worst.
Just booming here and everything, and that was because the natural resources of this
coal
area,
and
timber was being mined.
And that was before, those pictures were taken before TVA.
Yeah.
If you get to needing any energy, I recommend going to Sawmill Hollow, right down there in the middle of the road. 562-5444.
5444.
5444 for Digger's Propane. He can fix you up and you can do all your picnicking and camping and have just one source for your stove and your refrigerator and your lights and your mosquito repellent and everything.
He has more flavors than Baskin Robbins has in his ice cream
Is
store.
his propane God-given, or does it come from fossils? Did he go out and shoot some dinosaurs?
I think it's dinosaur related.
Dinosaur related?
I used to have a teacher who called them dinosaurs. She couldn't read. No, honestly, she couldn't read. She called them dinosaurs. You better call them dinosaurs too, because if you're reading and you mispronounce 2 words, you got a spanking. That meant if she mispronounced them, you better mispronounce them the same way.
Well, but
It's like oregano.
you know, that natural resources is basically what has created most of the wealth of this world,
Yes.
of the entire world. Now you've got manpower that,
When you
but
can,
without the natural resources put at his disposal to make something out of, a manpower is no good.
when you can treat natural resources as private property and enrich yourself from your hard work of harvesting those resources, that is wealth. That's why people left to Europe and came to America, because under feudalism, the king owned everything. You went out and cut some logs, and you
They
tried to go
belonged to the king.
through one of his toll roads.
Right,
They could confiscate your logs. They belonged to the king.
right.
And that's where the term robber baron came from,
Right.
because they always appointed barons to manage ports and toll roads and forts and things.
Now
and,
we call it the sheriff's department and the police
and
department.
they robbed the people blind,
Right.
and that's why people came to America,
Well,
was
they
to get
came-
rid of that Middle-Age feudalism,
Well,
and
they
socialism is another word for feudalism.
Right, they came to escape feudalism, but they also came because there was land here, and all the land was locked up by the barons and the earls and the
At
duchess
the Lorraine
and the
Crane.
king, and there was no land
Lorraine
available for
Crane.
anything. They had to work as serfs because they had no land that they could develop on their own. But here in this country, we found out we had more and more and more land, you know. And even today, if you ride out through Campbell County, most of your land that we have in Campbell County is not being put to any use. It's just holding the world together.
Well, Cora and TWRA's done more to damage natural resources than EPA in this area.
What?
Cora, I'm not sure what that stands for. It's land protected for hunters.
Why?
And I think Asbury had a lot to do with
Right.
creating, the old Judge Asbury had a lot to do with creating
I
Cora.
remember Corey Appleseeds.
And then they had TWRA, I think it's Tennessee Wildlife
Well, you know,
Resource
there was a
Agency.
move back a couple of years ago to defund TWRA.
Did you hear about the committee that is in charge of North Lake?
Oh yeah, that's
And nobody can figure out where their source of power comes from or anything. They don't have to answer to anybody. And there's 26 people on this committee. We only have 2 from Campbell County.
I mean, dude,
Ronnie down here at Sports Shops, one of them, I don't know who the other one is. But Knox County has 9 members on this committee,
Right, and they
and
don't-
not 1 inch of shoreline.
right, that's true. That's true.
That's like us forming a committee to control
Fort
Lake
Loudon.
Loudon. Yeah.
That's what we need to do.
It amazes me. Politics and power in this part
Everybody
of the
knows
country.
they're smarter than Knox County, though. We're just hillbillies.
Yeah, I know it. We have 800 miles of shoreline, more than anybody else, I think, on North Lake.
Well, I really think that there ought to be some moves for TVA to privatize a lot of that land around the lake.
Well, personally, I think they ought to shut down TVA and demolish the dams.
Let the
Because
water out.
look at, one dam in the state of Oregon and another dam in Upper Colorado and Nevada and another dam in these dams out west generate something like 6,000 megawatts each. Notice, the average for TVA dams and hydroelectric power is 106 megawatts. 6,000 megawatts out there, 100 megawatts here. We could take all the TVA lakes and add them up, couldn't produce enough electricity to come up to what one hydroelectric dam in the state of Washington or Colorado or Nevada or Oregon creates. Did you know in hydroelectric power production, Tennessee's not even in the top 5, they're ranked 9th in the nation?
Where are we producing ours? Coal and nuclear?
Mostly coal and oil.
Yeah,
We don't have much renewables, but did you know that hydroelectric power is counted as a renewable?
right.
So when these people talk about, oh, we're producing 12% of the nation's renewables, well, 99.8% of that they claim has been produced through hydroelectric production for decades, way before renewables was even used as a term.
There was an article run here back about 6 months ago, maybe a little longer, about the TVA's windmills on
Buffalo Mountain.
Buffalo. I think we used to call it Wind Rock, but
Yeah.
Buffalo. But I believe there's 18 windmills up there. 3 of them, if I remember correctly, belonged to the TVA or some sort of
Quasi-government.
quasi-government thing. And the other 15 are owned by some company, which from my understanding are subsidized.
Okay.
But the TVA shut their 3 down,
Why?
and they were trying to decide what to do with them. So I don't understand why they were lower. There were smaller mills, smaller generators than the other 15, but yet, if you've got 3 windmills sitting up there, looks to me like you would have them generating every watt that they could put out. Why would they shut them down? And they didn't go into any explanation as to why they were shut down. And they've not been there that many years. They're not been that long.
What? 7, 8 years, something like that?
It's not been long.
Yeah.
You know, we're using the word own, and
You talk about OWN?
OWN. We keep saying that we own the property, and what Jerry was hitting
I
on.
just got my rent bill today. They've increased it.
What
That property I own.
Jerry's talking
Your
about.
appraisal went up. Mine went down. My neighbor across the street, hers went down.
I went up $50,000 here on one piece of property.
We raised so much hell about
I'm going to.
4 years ago about how home sales had dropped 400% from 3,200 sales a year down to 800 sales a year in Campbell County, and the average price of the sale of a home dropped from 120,000 down to 90,000, and they raised the appraisal.
But do you see
Well, he
what a
didn't
good
make
jo-
that same
you
mistake
saw-
with
you saw what a-
residences
What a
this
good
time.
job our president was doing to keep our values up.
There you go.
Well, fellas, what you were
That's
talking,
his interpretation.
what you were talking about the king owning everything.
Uh-huh.
You stop and look at what you actually own.
The dumbest thing we ever did in this country, RL, was permit school taxes, and then that converted to property taxes.
If you go back to the meaning of the word own is that what you control. And if you'll look at the properties, the real estate, and the amount of control that we have over it is very, very small. And a deed, if I don't know exactly whether a deed doesn't really declare ownership. A deed is merely a paper that states cause.
It's a conveyance.
Well, it describes the cause, the locations, your pins, the area encompassed into it. If it's 1 acre, more or less, or 1,000 acres, a deed describes the property.
Parameters of
Yeah,
that
the
property.
parameters is what a deed does.
Well, usually there's the first part of it is that it's deeded in fee simple
Right.
to from whoever was the grantor to the grantee.
Right.
So it's being more specifically beginning as a stop here and going
Right.
there. Okay.
But it also goes back to where that this deed accepts all regulations and whatever that are on this property.
right.
You see, now you can prevent people from trespassing unless they're people of authority. You can't prevent a person of authority from trespassing on your property.
That's why, RL, we need to form a local militia so that we have a force around here like Clive Bundy had come to his rescue and drive off the federal agents. We need it around here to, if something happens where somebody comes to confiscate all your personal and private property, that we can call up the militia and they can come and have a standoff.
Eventually that will come to pass. I know some of this is said with tongue in cheek, but a man up here sleeping under the bridge over the railroad tracks has more control over his abode there than we do out here with our deeded property.
Your deeded property, the way I see a deed, is kind of what I described. It gives off the location of the piece of real estate that you're talking about. It does not say, and I don't believe it says it, the word own is used in there anywhere. And if you look at it in a business form, what you're doing is you're merely leasing that property or that piece of real estate from whatever county or city that it's located in. That's correct. You do not own it. Now if you've got a lot up here in the city and you want to do something with it, I don't care what it is, let's say you don't mow it.
Right.
And the grass grows to a certain height. All right, they can come and mow it and charge you for that.
Sure.
So you don't have the control as to the height of the grass. And this is where, as a society, we have come to the point that we've let ourselves, we've done this to ourselves, is what we've done.
We've permitted them to do it.
Well, let's say, they come out here and tell you, just like this new tax rate increase that's coming, they're going to say, oh, well, you don't want these chug holes in your road. Well,
I can work around them.
that's what I was going to say. I can live around the chug holes as long as I can eat or whatever. But there's more to this than people ever stop to think about, and this has been figured out many, many generations ago. The government don't want to come in and take your property. If they do not keep it. What they're in their objective is to acquire the value of that property to be transferred to them, not the property,
right.
The value of the property.
Right.
So basically what they're doing, they're confiscating your lease is what they're doing and turning that lease over to someone else.
Right. Well, is it Florida that has no property tax?
I don't know.
I don't know.
No, isn't it Florida that has no property tax? I would believe Florida
You can't take a person's home in Florida. That's why you can't take a person's home away from them.
That is, as long as they reside there.
Yes, that's why OJ moved to Florida.
And I believe that there's a limit to how much real estate, and if I'm not mistaken, in the state of Tennessee, it's 1 acre. You're allowed 1 acre and your residence that they cannot take as long as you reside there. But at your death, then that contract, that lease that you have on that property, what you call a deed, will be, if your next of kin or someone does step up, and then they have to pay the money. And this is basically where I see the thing. We don't own, well, tell me something that we own.
I agree totally with what you're saying.
Florida.
And your
Not
point,
Florida.
Your point,
Florida has some property tax.
your point about transferring the wealth of your property to the state,
The value.
yeah, the value of the property is exactly what they're after.
That's right. They cannot move that piece of real estate. It's laying there.
Yeah, they don't want to own it. They want somebody living there paying them.
The lease payment.
Yes.
And here's the other. If you dig into this thing a little deeper, let's say you lease this piece of property and what we call own anywhere out here in the county, and let's say you want to build a residence on it. What's the first thing you have to do in order?
Permit.
You have to go ask permission
Sure.
from the county.
Right.
You ask them, and you don't only ask them. You have to buy permission.
Right. Yeah.
You have to buy
have
the
to pay
permission.
for that permit.
You have to pay for permission to build a building or anything. Now,
You have to build it to suit them.
And you have to build it to meet what they say.
You know what's
now.
interesting? Now this is local and state government, but what Utah has done out there is making a move to return ownership of land to the states. Did you know, according to the Constitution, the federal government's only permitted to own 10 square miles of land?
Yeah, that's
Washington, D.C.
Right.
Any other land, they must get permission
Right.
from the state legislature,
Right.
and it's only for forts,
Right.
shipyards, magazines, and arsenals.
Right.
Don't say grazing land.
What do you do when you have some rotten motor juice, Bob?
What?
What do you do when you get some rotten motor juice?
Well, first thing I did.
Well, I mean, after you get
5629370.
Yep.
That's Vital Care Medical Transport, because I knew I was in a bad way and I need to get to the hospital as expeditiously as I could, and in the most tender, loving care way that I could. And I called Vital Care, and they were right there, Johnny on the spot, picked me up and carried me to the hospital, and I spent 5 days up there.
562-9370, you say?
562-9370.
What if you can't remember that?
Just call 911, tell them you want Vital Care.
Was that ptomaine poisoning?
What?
Ptomaine poisoning?
I don't know what it was, a food poison or something.
Ew, it was black and oily looking. It was in there.
Terrible.
No more information
Don't
we
want
need,
more of
right?
it.
Well, I got that one time when I was 18 out of a Coke machine, and
Ptomaine?
some food poisoning of some
I had
kind.
it 3 times.
And
I like to died once.
I stayed in my room, and finally a friend came by and called an ambulance for me. I wasn't going to go to the hospital. I guess I was going to lay there and die from dehydration.
Right.
Because, man, you just give up every bodily fluid you got. And over and over and over. And, in fact, you throw up so much, you start bleeding, from the aggravation. And
How is it that people, we see it advertised on TV constantly, the children living out of the garbage cans and whatever else. How is it that they survive?
The
All
people
of-
that are eating out of garbage cans.
Yeah. How do they
Well, a
survive?
lot of people have
You
natural.
just cook your food.
A lot of people have natural
Do what?
You just cook your food.
antibodies that
Well-
that resist this sort of thing. The weak ones will die off.
And if you've been raised in certain environments, your stomach will deal with a lot of stuff. Yeah. Especially if it's fresh, if it's fresh,
Right.
whatever. But anyhow,
Well, folks, we're going to be heading off here in just a little bit. We want to start giving more and more thought, I hope, to the fairly, in the near future, election of our county officials.
County commissioners especially. County commissioners especially, they're either going to cut spending or raise taxes.
I've been trying to get state legislators to, and I got all 69 Republicans on an email database, and I've been trying to get their attention. The state's attorney general said that if a law was passed that property taxes could not be increased without a referendum by the people, that it would be constitutional. But you can't get anybody to bring it up down there in Nashville.
Of course.
at that point, the people who are going to be affected by that should have the say-so as to whether they would accept it or not.
Exactly. Exactly.
Well, I think y'all have to own property to vote myself.
I agree with that
I
totally.
believe that's what he just. I see what you're missed. The point I was making was the same point, is that the property owners are the ones that are affected by property tax.
And
they're
they
the
should be
ones
allowed
that
to
should
vote on
choose
it. Yes.
as to how that would be.
But you can't get anybody. I've also tried to, I've looked at recall acts from different states, and I put together one for Tennessee. And not being an attorney, I'm sure probably had flaws in it, but you got to start somewhere. It was a 17-page Tennessee Recall Act, and I can't get a single legislator down there to take a serious look at it.
Maybe they're pretty comfortable in those controlled environments and whatever.
Well, they don't want to insult the home base, the politicians back home that are spending the money, the ones that come to their rescue when they're running for election.
Well, they're not the ones that elect, and like you say, this upcoming election is one of the most important we've ever faced.
When you count the votes, you determine the election.
We are.
Is that who counts them determines? Is that what you're saying?
We are facing the most corrupt government in Jacksboro we've ever seen, and they are planning carefully to make it even worse and more corrupt than it is now.
I think so. I think that's true.
And folks have got to come up with poll watchers and monitors and keep an eye on them voting machines day and night. Don't let Jim Dial anywhere near them things. Don't let David Young and his protege in crime, Jim Dial, get anywhere near those machines. Because William Beard, as crooked as he can be, he's put Ann Ayers in charge of the election office. She has moral and ethical question marks about her, and none of these people can be trusted. And
Well, the bottom line is, the working people out here and the people who have got this property leased from the county
right,
are the ones that are going to pay these bills. Also, the people who don't own property are going to end up paying them too. They don't realize it, but the property owners, well, they will pass these taxes on. These taxes are going to be shared by everyone.
At the meeting last night, Marlo was telling them, "Oh, we're facing a crisis. We're going to have to look at a property tax increase." This is the same man that just wasted $575,000 to pay 1 mile of road in each district at election time, $100,000 to upgrade computers in his office.
$1.2 million for the solar panels, or 1.5 or something.
Yeah, and that was contracted and begun before the county even approved it.
Right. And was not bid, of course.
And that's right.
Well, you ain't seen
and
nothing.
He signed off on every illegal fee split.
You ain't seen nothing like's going to happen if you let the La Pollock Mafia get in.
Well, you have seen the Wild Bob and Ronnie and RL and what's your name? Jerry show. That's it for tonight, folks.
Right. And we will see you Saturday.
Saturday,
4 o'clock on the tube here, as well as on 1450 and also on 100.9 FM.
Vacuum tubes bringing
Is that
you
back?
vacuum tubes bringing you the
100
Wild Bob and Ronnie.
Is 100.9 on?
Yeah, that's
FM. Have they started yet?
That's FM. They just broadcast the same show on.
Have they started it?
I think so. Yeah.
How much wattage are they putting out? How many watts do you know?